When I met our fourth storyteller tonight, Yamini Rajan, a couple of months ago, I was absolutely amazed at her courage and candor. After years of struggling with depression, anxiety, and bulimia, she's here to share her story in an effort to raise awareness about a subject that is mostly hidden in the dark. Mental health issues are not going to go away anytime soon, she told me, which is why she hopes to shine a light on the most important topic of her generation and mine. Together, we hope to build a brighter future for all generations here and to come. I present to you Yamini. She's a high school student at Sunset.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Yamini Rajan. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a junior at Sunset High School. I'm here to talk about my long journey with mental health and why I feel starting a conversation on mental health with teens is essential. So my struggle with depression has definitely had its fair share of dark moments, but the absolute worst would have to be my 8th grade year. I'd been depressed for as long as I can remember, but the transition of moving from India to America was extremely rough. I was worried about fitting into American culture and feared being too brown to ever make real friends like the one I had left back home. Combined with my mother getting diagnosed with breast cancer, my solution to my sadness was to completely disassociate with the world and retreat into myself. Drowning in low self-esteem, insecurity, and absolute numbness, I fell into a vicious cycle of self-harm and anger. I was furious with myself for feeling this way and furious with the world for not understanding me. The combination of this rage and my endless guilt resulted in a suicide attempt at age 13. So how did I, the girl who seemed to have it all together, sink so low? The answer is shame. I was so truly ashamed with myself for even daring to feel the way I did. And I was disgusted with the fact that I had the audacity to even think about complaining and just accepted that the dark, ugly feelings were just a part of me. I was embarrassed to ask for help and burdened my loved ones with my pain. I'd always been somewhat of an outcast in social situations. My parents and teachers saw it as me simply being too mature for my age, and my peers just saw it as me not being one of them. I saw it as a fault within myself, something wrong with the way that I was built. As a result, I did anything to fit in. I became a doormat, allowing people to walk all over me, to use me as they saw fit, just so I wouldn't be alone anymore. As I got older, these people-pleasing qualities invaded nearly every one of my relationships. While this resulted in the darkness in my chest growing larger, I simply accepted this as my fate, even though it manifested in panic attacks and suicidal thoughts. Eventually, things became too much, leading me to try and take my own life. Shortly after that, I had a dream in which I visited my own grave and watched my loved one surrounding it in tears. That morning, I woke up and I knew something had got to give. This couldn't be my life. I went to school and told my counselor everything. He asked me how long I had felt like this. After thinking about it for a few moments, I responded, "It feels like forever." Once I opened up to one person, the rest went by fairly quickly. My parents were informed, and I found myself visiting a therapist once a week. The process was painfully slow, and I've had multiple setbacks along the way, but each setback made me stronger. I discovered parts of myself that I hadn't connected with in years. I grew more self-aware, and I rebuilt my relationships with my parents and my little sister, who had spent so much time pushing away. While some days are still a little darker than others, I find myself so much more prepared and confident to face them. I began weekly therapy, and under the guidance of my therapist, I was able to identify which parts of my life were negatively affecting me. My parents and I figured out how to communicate with each other in a more effective way, and I learned how to manage my mood, my dependency on the razor, and diminish the cycle of self-inflicted abuse. I still struggle with not letting my emotions get the best of me, and there are some days where I want nothing more than to cut my stress away, but I've learned how to reach out and ask for help. Being a full-time student with extracurriculars and trying to have a social life while dealing with depression and anxiety has been extremely difficult, yet I wouldn't change a thing. The experiences I've had and the people I've met have truly changed me for the better. I've had the privilege of being surrounded with some of the most supportive people, and for that I am forever grateful. Luckily, I am fortunate enough to have extremely supportive parents who help me to the best of their capabilities every day, and not to mention my friends who keep me sane even when I don't feel it. I also create a lot of art. The time I get to escape and just draw something is something I cherish the most. Art has become my way of interacting with the world, a way for me to express my innermost thoughts and feelings. One of the biggest issues is not everyone is as fortunate. There are far too many of us who aren't taken seriously or told to get over it. Such mentality shames those who are affected into suffering in silence. Too afraid to speak up against the perceptions of what living with mental illness is like, they would rather allow the darkness to feed off them than draw attention to the problem. The stigma surrounding mental health is very real. The shame and fear created can be seen in a multitude of ways over numerous years. That shame exists to this day. The ignorance surrounding mental health and wellness prevents so many from reaching out and getting the help they deserve. Unfortunately, the number of stressors in the lives of teenagers is only increasing, leading more and more of us to break down. Looking around my high school, it's a rare day when someone or another isn't on the verge of a mental breakdown due to unstable emotions and stress. Yet very few are willing to speak up and get help. Why? Because we're afraid of stereotypes, of being told to toughen up and handle it. Or worst of all, so what? It's just high school. Watch out for the real world. What many seem to forget is that if mental health needs of teens aren't appropriately met, some of us won't make it to the real world. This ignorance is due to a lack of education. Mental health is often tucked away in the health curriculum, and focusing on definitions, not real-life situations, is adding to the stigmatization. This is a shame, especially when there are so many resources available. From school psychologists to organizations like ASHA International, there is a way to help, but we just aren't accessing it. By allowing this culture to go on, we are allowing this shameful stigma to go on. It's time we open up a dialogue among each other and combat the shame once and for all. As a society, we need to wake up and realize that mental illness left untreated can have drastic consequences. Living with mental illness can leave you crippled in self-doubt and hatred, and it can also lead to insomnia, trouble concentrating, and mood swings. Yet a lot of the symptoms and consequences are unnoticed by us because they can't be visibly seen. We're quick to sympathize with those who have physical ailments. Isn't it time we extend that same empathy to those with mental illnesses? Suicide is the second leading cause of death among the ages of 10 to 24, yet that fact is almost never discussed. It's time to start a conversation on mental wellness. The lives of our youth depend on it. You could be the one to open up a discussion, whether it be joining an organization like ASHA International or even just sparking a dialogue within your close friends. For me, speaking here today is an amazing opportunity to advocate for a cause that I care deeply about. No matter how you advocate, every voice counts towards the opening of a broader discussion. Another resource is starting right in schools, training teachers to look out for students in distress, teaching kids about mental health, helping them understand that what they're feeling doesn't make them an outcast or a freak, and then providing them with resources that allow for further help. Showing kids multiple avenues of support to help them feel less alone, and personally, I found that depression made me feel so isolated that any kind of support helped me tremendously. Even just keeping an open mind is one of the best ways to help. By listening and just being there for someone, even if you don't relate, can be extremely powerful. Simply being a good listener could save someone's life. I found that just talking about my depression made me feel better, and I could never thank those who listened enough. Finally, I would like to thank you all for being here. Please use this event as a stepping stone to further educate yourselves and join the fight against destigmatizing mental illness. It's so important now more than ever to engage in a healthy dialogue, and hopefully for many of us that starts today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yamini. I see some of our guests standing. There's room in the front. Please come have a seat. Get comfortable. Well, as Yamini was saying, we must start a conversation about mental health, especially in our schools and colleges, and create that bright future for our children. You know, 1 in 5 of our children is struggling with a mental health condition, and nearly 80% of them are not finding the help and the care that they need. We must change that. Mental health conditions are a leading impediment, not just to students in high schools, but colleges across the world as well. And when left untreated, they can lead to school failure, family conflict, substance abuse, violence, juvenile and criminal justice involvement, and suicide. We have taken Yamini's advice to our hearts. And this year alone, ASHA International, through our Let's Talk About Mental Health program in high schools, will be reaching nearly 700 high school students. And the feedback, thank you. And the feedback that we are receiving from the students are so heartwarming. The first and foremost thing that they tell us is that they no longer feel alone, that they too can talk about it. And we hear over and over again, oh my God, your stories remind us that mental health, mental illness, suicide is nothing to be making jokes about. This is serious. It is a matter of life and death. And so we are glad to be making a difference. Yamini is a member of the ASHA Storytellers team, and she wants to engage schools and empower youth to take charge of their own mental health and well-being. Thanks again, Yamini.